All right. Welcome to the last session of the Americas and EMEA time zone um, for the Staff Engineers Path Book Club. Today we're discussing Chapter 9, which is What's Next. And this chapter, to give a quick summary, is all about taking a look at your future and the different paths that you can consider. So it talks about being deliberate with your choices as you are entirely responsible for your career and deciding what's important to you along the way. Talks about how opportunities increase as you gain experience and build relationships and skills. And also taking time to look back at where you've been, where you are, and where you're going to see if it aligns with what you really want. And it reminds you to make sure that you're thinking about your future at multiple different levels, not just beyond your current role, but possibly also beyond your current company. So with that, we can kick things off. Does anyone have, I know there's nothing on the agenda yet, but if anyone has anything they wanted to start with, and take some notes here.
There was one quote in that chapter that I really liked. I can paste it in. Wait a second. Here. The quote is Majors, that's the name. Majors emphasizes that management should never be seen as a promotion. It's a change or profession with a different set of skills to learn. And I really like that quote because it captures what I like about, I guess, management culture at GitLab. It very much doesn't feel like a hierarchy, like, oh, this is my boss who's telling me what to do. It really just feels like we are working in tandem as a team. They have a set of skills and certain tasks that they are responsible for, and I have other skills and tasks. And together we reach a goal. And that captures really well in that quote for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've always found it interesting. GitLab is the largest company I've worked for, and I feel like it's the first company where I've really seen people with true management skills, like as a skill set of its own, not just sort of like a mixture of management and IC skills, kind of working along the way. And I've come to really appreciate that skill set, and it's really nice that we have it set up that way.
I think the relative flatness of the organization helps that. Kind of what came to my mind with this quote is like servant leadership, which is a little bit of a weird phrase, but I looked at my manager to help make it easier for me to just do my job. Like escalate, unblock, just get things out of my way, not, hey, please don't you be the person that's in the way. And that's what I really like about my manager here. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think
The other
that's
thing is you don't.
I was going to say I've heard that style of management, servant leadership come up quite a few times at GitLab. So I do think that's one of the management styles that's certainly favored in various departments at GitLab.
The other thing is you don't need to be a manager to manage things. I think people sometimes forget that.
All right. Well, I'm curious. This is more of a general question since we're kind of, at the end of the book, but like, what are different ways that your perspective on staff engineering or becoming a staff engineer or being a staff engineer have changed, like after reading through the book?
It's a lot less nebulous. I feel like the whole point of the book is it depends and we don't really know and there's no layout. This book did a really good job of saying here's a framework that you can put that thinking in And I feel like I know what to do to take the next steps, whereas before it was just like this giant big blob. So it helped provide some structure, I think.
A bit more specific thing that kind of clicked for me was, I think early on in the book, it spoke about how it matters to whom you report. And that kind of helped me understand like how can I use the skip level meetings that we already have, for example, to make that difference help me in career growth as well, right? It's also the first time I'm working at a bigger company where skip levels are just by default, they exist. I didn't even know what the word means. Like I had my first skip level meetings, and then later I asked someone, "Hey, I see you have a skip level meeting on your calendar. What is that actually?" And then, also I've had some, but they weren't called that. And like hearing the book tell us about this will make me approach that level differently if I want to get something out of it for my career growth.
I think my a lot of the things that she covered in the book, I kind of implicitly had known or learned somehow, but first having it explicitly called out was helpful, especially like the feelings of shortcomings or overwhelm or imposter syndrome. It's nice to know that it's not weird to get to the staff level and still feel like you don't really belong here. And so a lot of that was kind of like, I don't know, making me feel better, but also made me feel more overwhelmed with how much like the details that I hadn't thought through, with regard to kind of like what Manuel said, like taking into consideration who you're talking to, taking into consideration what teams you reach out to, how you. I mean, it gets back to one of the previous meetings where we talked about like soft skills, where soft skills are a big part of being at this level. And while I have kind of internalized some soft skills at the more senior level, like going up to this level, it expands it and makes me really uncomfortable with having to do that. But also having it called out as necessary is helpful.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was kind of seeing like there were some good examples of like how those soft skills, like what it kind of looks like when you're actually applying them. Because I felt similarly where I'm like, I'm aware of all of these things, so it doesn't seem like new information, but it's like for example, leading a big project that's like big cross team project. At the surface level, I'm like, oh, I can do that, and then they kind of describe like, oh, there's all of this sort of advocating that's involved and getting people together, and it's kind of stuff that I didn't necessarily think about or wouldn't really structure or organize in such a nicely organized manner, and seeing that kind of written out, it was super helpful to just realize that like that's a skill that you need to build. You can't just say like I kind of understand how to do a big project. You have to like work your way up to being able to work through all those different steps.
I think one of the other things that struck me was that, like for the first part of my career, I kind of let things go. I wasn't very explicit about my decisions, and thinking through from a strategic standpoint. And in the past couple of years, like I've started doing that more, I've realized that I was kind of coasting on this kind of implicit decision making and trying to look at it more as a strategic choice. And this book really laid out how many more choices like I've accidentally made without realizing it. And it kind of going back to the overwhelm, it like overwhelms me to think about how on I have to be throughout the day, like every day, thinking about this stuff, or at least that's the feeling I got, in order to avoid having accidentally made some poor implicit decisions.
Can we talk about that? Because I think you're right. That overwhelm of like, yeah, this stuff is great, but I feel like I need to have like a background process in my head running all the time of it. And I feel like maybe just like over time it becomes less deliberate, but it feels like a lot, right?
Yes, it does.
We can do it.
Yeah, yes, we can. And it's one of those things that the other thing that the book kind of, to me, reiterated often and kind of helped me believe was that they're all skills to learn. Like nobody's born knowing how to strategically choose their career paths in every day or whatever. But some people are better at it. Some people are more strategic thinkers than I am, apparently. But it feels like I ought to be like working 3 times more to be able to set up decisions to further my career in the way that I want.
Yeah, I think that's maybe something that's like worth kind of working on is like it's easy to see, okay, I need to be thinking about these things, which can be overwhelming, but like what's the first thing we can do now? Like what's that first step of like, think about only these few things to start until it becomes automatic, and then pull in some other things. It's a good topic to dive into a bit more, I suppose.
So I'll pipe in with what I've tried to do over the last couple of years, and that is, and it's worked. I'm getting better, but breaking down kind of goals. Starting with the high level, like yearly goals, like everybody does that, or even like 5-year goals. And then how do those 5-year goals break down into yearly goals, and only keeping them really like 1 to 3, and focusing. I've tried like personal and career and all that, and that hasn't worked so well for me, but kind of breaking those down into yearly goals, then quarterly, then monthly, then weekly. And I have a process where every day, like I'll set up what are the top 3 things that I want to do today, to work on today. And that feeds into the top 3 things that I wanted to get done this week, or at least make some progress on, maybe not get them completed, but progress on. And those feed into the top 3 things that I want to get done in the month, so on and so forth. And I just, at the beginning of every year, I reflect on the 5-year plan and set up this the next year, reflect on the last year, and then same with the beginning of every month, every quarter, every week, and then it feels like a lot when I'm saying it, but it like I keep it short, because I started out like this huge template of daily and weekly and monthly reviews and all this, and I didn't get it done. I didn't like it. It didn't work. So I keep it really short. So it's like, these are the top 3 things, at most 3 things that I want to make progress on. And that has helped guide my decisions, and feels like potentially a good way to focus on these things, like pick one skill or one thing that we want to work on towards our next to staff level, or becoming principal or whatever, and break that down into those level goals and slowly chip away at it. And then like I don't know, and prioritize those skills at the beginning so you know which ones you want to work on in what order and slowly chip away at it. But I would love to hear other ideas or thoughts on how to keep those things in mind. And I'll just real quick go back. And the reason I break it down that way is because I forget. I forget about what I'm focusing on. So reviewing it every day, like at the beginning of the day, it's nice because I set it up what I want to work on that day. So I don't have to like put a lot of effort into it throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, I just reflect on how it went. But I always, in my template, I have like the weekly goals up at the top of it of every daily check-in kind of review or whatever, so that I keep like, I can reflect, review those at the same time that I'm thinking of what I'm going to do this today to further those. And the same thing with the weekly template and the monthly template and all that. It kind of rolls up, but I found that that's a good way for me to keep those higher level goals in mind, and having those checkpoints like every week, it kind of has you reflect on the monthly ones. Every month it has you reflect on the yearly or the quarterly ones, and so on and so forth. And it kind of, I find it easier to course correct, breaking it down that way and reflecting and reviewing them at a regular pace.
I really like that system. I feel like it's a good habit that I need to make. One of the things I've noticed about myself, and this is going to be kind of a selfish question, I suppose, but like I'm good at coming up with the yearly plans and our goals, and sometimes I'm good at coming up with weekly goals that may or may not align with them. But like taking a yearly goal and then breaking it down into like those sort of monthly kind of sections is always tricky, because it's kind of like I always have difficulty seeing what can contribute to it at that scale. Do you have any tips for like how you think about those things as you try to break them down, or an example maybe?
I am also, that's a skill that I'm still working on, and it's taken practice, and it's I've found that it's, yeah, I think part of the thing I like about the system as it stands now is that I'm forced to break down stuff all the time for every week. So I'm starting with small things. Like I can see how, like if I want to make progress on this one project at work by the end of the week, like what's that going to take day to day? And then that kind of, okay, great. I have that weekly goal. How does that feed into like my monthly one? And so I get practice, and I'm still not good at it. I can't always think it all the way through. But one of the things that with the bigger goals, I try and think from like, I want to be here in a year. I don't know. I want to be a principal engineer, per se. That's not a real goal. I'm making it up, but like what I have, GitLab has laid out like what you need to do for principal engineer. So I have kind of a guiding principle there, but I start from the end. Like, what's the last step I would need to get to there? And then what about the step before that? Kind of the backwards planning. And step back. And sometimes I've found this a number of times where it doesn't work out in the time frame that I picked. Like if I think, oh, it's going to take me a month to kind of pick up this skill, if I'm able to devote 15 hours a month or whatever to it, and so on and so forth, it doesn't work out. So I have to reflect and review whether or not that goal is reasonable within the time frame I picked. So the backwards planning is my best tool that I've used. And like I said, I'm still not great at it.
Cool. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about that, Steve?
Yeah.
Do you, and you can decline to answer, do you think that the trouble that you might have is like the goal that you have in mind is like not specific enough? So of course you can't break it down. And really what you need to work on is change the goal a little bit differently, get more clear on what the goal is, or that's not it?
It's that might be part of it, is that the goal might be broad, like too broad for the specific timeline, or yeah, it might need some more specifics. I think like one of the skills that I know that I kind of have is I do kind of like have a natural tendency to prioritize work in certain ways that seems to work out pretty well. But it's kind of like for me, it just feels like I'm working reactively, but then it's kind of like, oh, like those things were important, so that was good. So then but then connecting those dots to, quarterly goals or yearly goals is where I run into trouble, because I can easily say, I want to achieve this long term. And this is the kind of stuff I'm doing every day. But where are those sort of like middle milestones is where I run into trouble.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel very similar, and reactive, I guess, describes it very well. I think that's in part because at my former job, which was my first longer, really serious job, there was just nothing really in place for growth in the sense that we're talking about here. So I would just have said, yes, of course, I want to advance my career. I have no idea what that looks like. I'm just, I don't know, I work on stuff and make things work, and everybody is happy and likes my work. Yay. So now it's the first time that I even have to think about these things. And I think with the skills that I already developed at that old job, like, I mean, it's not like I didn't grow there. It just, there was no structure for it, right? So when I arrived here, I pretty much was at senior level already, but I didn't start as a senior because I had no real concept of all these structures. But it was very easy for me, as you described it, Steve, to just, well, do whatever I think work is and should be successful by doing that. And suddenly everyone says, hey, you should be a senior. Yeah, I guess I should. So it's very interesting for me that I guess I have, I don't know, reached the point where I will have to be much more deliberate about all that and have to think about these things. And the other thing I found interesting is that, Ethan, what you described about how you break it down and then set these goals. It's funny to me because I don't do it currently anymore, COVID, but I used to do that just for my personal life, actually. Like at the end of the year, in a, I guess, kind of cliche way, I sat down and I wrote down a list of stuff like, next year I want to do these things. And it wasn't necessarily a everything list, just if I look at this list once a month, I will want to see these things. Maybe I will decide after 3 months, oh, actually, nope, but I wanted to still be reminded about it. And I've never really done that for work stuff in that way. But it worked fairly well for me in my personal stuff. It's really nice.
And it's funny you mentioned it or describe it that way. I'm similar with the long-term goals, where I'll have my list that I check in on. And when it comes to career goals, I will say that like my 5-year goals, it's most common that I never reach them and have like changed direction by the time I'm getting anywhere close, and have reset to a different goal along the way, which I think is that's a fine thing to do. Yeah, it just reminded me of that.
I think I have my problem with my long-term goals is like really being sure what I want, especially like 5 years out. Like I have no idea. I don't really have a good grasp of what it means to be like a principal engineer here. Seems like 5 years is probably a good time frame if I do everything right to be a principal engineer, but I don't know what that means, and I don't know if I want it. And like there's a lot of technical skills that I would like to pick up because I find that stuff fun. But what I actually want to be doing, like there's so much about GitLab that I love from the company and the culture and the people and everything. But I don't know what I'm going to feel like in 5 years. So I kind of go into it knowing that these are guideposts, and I'm going to kind of point myself in that direction, and with the full understanding that it's really broad. It's specific enough so that I know if I met it, but I also know that it's very hand wavy, and that I'm probably going to change as I get further along the path and I realize, oh no, I don't like this, or I prefer this other related thing, or I don't know, going to be a beet farmer or something. I think the way I've started to view goals is not like achievements, but they're guidance. They're not necessarily the end of the race. It's just kind of a North Star of where I'm going to focus while it makes sense. And that's why I kind of like my review process, and like, oh, next year I'm just going to review and see if I still think that this is a worthwhile path. If not, I change my 4-year or 5-year goal or whatever.
Yeah, I think in the book there, the author kind of goes into that with having your map and then being able to, like, expecting to go off trail a lot and possibly stay off trail to find a new map. So yeah, that's a good way to put it. All right, well, we're kind of right at the end of our time here. So if anyone has any last minute things they wanted to chat about,
thank you for coordinating this. This was amazing. Genuinely, it was amazing. I'm sad it's over. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thank you all for joining.
Great. It was really, really cool. Personally, I think the sync sessions were the most amazing part. I participated in 2 time zones because they were so nice. Yeah, really nice seeing you.
Yeah, I like how they can go in so many different directions. It's nice. Cool. Well,
it's nice to work together on a shared goal that is like cross teams, cross departments, all that, and just kind of everybody in a similar struggle, not alone.
I wonder if there's a way to like create that kind of a setup, in other formats, like outside of book clubs, to get that kind of collaboration going.
It almost feels like a meetup, a regular meetup, or a mentor circle, where you're not necessarily a mentor mentee, but you're all mentoring each other. I forget what Benjamin Franklin called it. He had a junta or something like that. It was like he got together with peers and discussed their problems, and they all try and figure out their own issues. But I don't know if there's any structure currently at GitLab for that.
I'm not aware of any. That seems like something that's worth opening an issue and sharing it. Because I'd be interested in joining meetings like that from time to time. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining. And there is a survey at the top of the doc, if you don't mind filling that out, to give some feedback on book clubs in general and also on staff engineering resources and things like that. I appreciate it. But yeah, otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.